Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks today. Chicago, a team that had a really rough year last year, following a rough year the year before, and I could go on. So currently they're 6-11-1. So through 18 games, 6 wins, and if it feels like Groundhog Day to Chicago fans, it should. They were 6-12 last season through 18 games, 6-9-3 through 18 games the year prior to that, and in 2021-2022 they were 6-10-2 through 18 games. So 6 wins through 18 games is sort of a Chicago way of doing things. But it does feel like that while the record is one thing, it's the play of the team that has some concern from fans and from media as well. So I wanted to dive into this today. They have lost 4 of their last 5 games, and noteworthy as well, they've scored 1 goal per game in every game except one where they scored 2. So the attack is a problem. Now it starts with a home game against Detroit. They lose 4-1. Then they lost away from home in Dallas 3-1. They come back home. They win over Minnesota 2-1 in overtime, which is why they weren't last on the power rankings this week, because I saw some questions of why aren't Chicago last. Then they go on the road. They lose 3-1 against Seattle, and they lost 4-1 against Vancouver. Now, at the center of all of the speculation, Luke Richardson, right? His record as head coach, I added it together to a record of 55 wins, 113 regulation losses, and 14 losses in extra time. However, at the time Richardson's hired, which is a little over 2 seasons ago now, the expectations for this team were basically tanking for Bedard, trying to get Bedard's rookie season to be a successful one, which it was. And now this year it's about trying to get Bedard's game to that next level. It's part of the reason why Kyle Davidson went out in the offseason and made the additions he did, was with the idea of having these veteran players who could help out with Bedard, and it hasn't quite turned out the way it was expected to. So their upcoming schedule, I want to briefly touch on this. So tomorrow night they're at home against Anaheim. You would say Anaheim's a game they should win, they should score some goals. Anaheim's getting excellent goaltending, though. That game could easily end up being a 1-0, 2-1 game. Then they're at home on Thursday against Florida. I mean, I could make the argument that that's a trap game, but Florida's had a couple of losses over the last couple of weeks, and so I don't see Florida not bringing their A game for that one. Then on Saturday, they're in Philadelphia. I don't know if I like their chances in Philadelphia either. I know there's some insane record, and I'm trying to remember if it's Chicago doesn't win in Philadelphia or Philadelphia doesn't win in Chicago, but I know there's a weird one there. And then on Wednesday, the 27th, they're at home against Dallas. Friday, the 29th, they're in Minnesota. And then Sunday, the 1st of December, they're at home against Columbus. Following on Monday, they're in Toronto, away in that one. And then they come back home on the 4th of December to play against Boston. In their upcoming schedule, Anaheim, that should be winnable. Anaheim's in a similar position to Chicago. Philadelphia could be winnable, although they've been playing well lately. Columbus, again, is that a winnable game? Yes. And Boston is very unpredictable. That could be a winnable game for them as well. So there's a chance that things are going to start going well for Chicago, but for the Blackhawks, looking at the stats, and basically I just made it like, okay, from Halloween till now, how the stats look for these players, anemic. Absolutely anemic. So these line combinations I pulled off daily face-off. The reality is these lines are in a blender all the time. And I've talked about this a couple times. I'll throw this in again here. I think they need to find lines that the players are happy with, the players are comfortable with, where it feels like there's the best chance for chemistry, and just kind of leave it as is and hope that chemistry could develop over. Say, give them 3 or 4 games together where you're like, all right, your lines are staying together, and I'm going to stop switching out the wingers for Bedard, and we're just going to see if we can ride through this. So Kurashev, 8 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Last year, he had a really good season alongside Bedard. I thought Bedard brought some good points out of Kurashev's game. But just the 2 points in 8 games again with stats since October 31st. Bedard, the troubling number here is just 4 assists in 8 games. He is trending in the wrong direction offensively. And against Vancouver, I mean, he had a couple of chances, but he's not that same player. Now, part of the problem, I think, for Bedard is that if you play against Chicago right now, what's your job? Shut down Connor Bedard. There's nobody else on this team that scares you offensively. Donato has been their best producing forward, 8 games again since Halloween, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. But if Ryan Donato was playing for Minnesota, if he was playing in Boston, he would have a much less of a role, right? So part of the reason Donato's getting points is because Chicago doesn't really have the depth, and Donato going out and getting points and goals here and there means he's going to get those opportunities he probably would not be getting elsewhere. Mikheyev, 6 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points for him, again, since October 31st. Mikheyev is a forward who has the talent and the ability to play top six, but the numbers do not back it up at all and have not backed it up for a very long time. Nick Foligno, 8 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points for Foligno. And I mean, you're going to get an honest effort from Foligno every single night, but if you're relying on him for goals and points, that's probably not going to lead to a successful season. Bertuzzi, 8 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. Tyler Bertuzzi hasn't really lived up to expectation either. The 3 goals in 8 games is fine. The 4 points in 8 games and his points in general, I think he's got 6 points this season. It just hasn't been working. Teravainen got off to a great start. I still think Teuvo and Bedard should have some chemistry, but Teravainen's numbers, they don't back up that idea. Just the 1 goal in 8 games since Halloween. Dickinson, just 1 goal in 8 games. Dickinson had a good year last year for Chicago. This year's numbers have retreated back to previous season's kind of totals. Joey Anderson, 4 games, no points, again, since Halloween. Maroon, 7 games, no points. Not a point producer. Reichel, 8 games, 2 assists. Not getting goals. And Craig Smith, 1 goal in 8 games. So looking at their forward group over that 8-game portion of their schedule, Donato and Bertuzzi with 3 goals lead the way. Foligno with 2 goals. Then you get to the blue line, and Seth Jones is injured. So that doesn't help the attack either, because you don't really have defensemen here that are big point producers. I should also mention Taylor Hall, who was a healthy scratch last game, has played 7 games, again since Halloween, and 3 assists. So Taylor Hall may not have expected to be a scratch, but has he been playing really well? Nah, he's had some near misses here and there. I know I've written his name on the board a lot for near misses, but again, near misses are not goals. It's not really helping, right? So on the blue line, Vlasic with 2 assists in 8 games. Vlasic's an excellent defenseman. The offense, I think, will be part of his game as it grows. But it's just 2 assists in 8 games. Murphy has 3 assists in 8 games. Kaiser, 8 games, no points for Kaiser. Brody, 5 games, no points. Allen, 2 assists in 7 games. And Alec Martinez has played 2 games in that period in time. And of course, he's not really a point producer. He's more of a shot blocker, so no points for him. The bright spot for this team, other than the fact that the sun's right outside my window, which just changes the lighting on the set, but the bright spot's been the goaltending. They're not taking advantage of what's been excellent goaltending. Mrazek's 2-3 with a .921 save percentage, and Soderblom 1-2 with a .945 save percentage over this period in time. Chicago 3-5 over that 8-game period. 1.88 goals scored per game, 2.88 goals against per game over that time period. They're allowing less than 3 goals per game. Defensively, they're playing all right. 17.7% on the power play. You might want to bring that up a bit. 78.3% on the penalty kill. You're going to want to bring that up as well. So the special teams are not great. The overall offensive numbers are awful. And so the question then becomes one of, if you're not going to find additions to this team, so if Kyle Davidson's not going to go out and try to pick up a couple of guys to get some more goals and get something going, does that leave Luke Richardson on the hot seat? Can the offensive issues this team has been having that has led to them having the same kind of start they've had for years, can that be traced back to the coaching? And for Richardson, he is in his 3rd year. One thing working against Luke Richardson staying behind the bench is Bedard's production. If Bedard was a point per game and getting goals, even if they're 6-11-1, if I'm Kyle Davidson, I leave it as it is. I'd be like, you know what? Bedard's producing. We've got some of these veterans in here. They're doing well. And yeah, we're losing games, but at least our young superstar players trending in the right direction. With that young superstar player not trending in the right direction, you can make the argument for a change behind the bench. I have been very vocal as a supporter of Luke Richardson for a long time, but if they came out tomorrow and said we're making a change at head coach, I don't know that I could argue that that was the wrong decision. And it is that interesting place because nobody expected Chicago to be in the playoffs, but there are troubling signs here that a change behind the bench might be needed. The absolute inability to score goals. I think part of it might be confidence too, because once they're down, their attack just is kind of done. And so there's definitely and it could be a body language thing too, where you realize, well, that team's not coming back. Some teams you see that with, where as soon as the other team's got the lead, you go, well, I don't have to watch the rest of this game. I know they're done. And other teams, you go, yeah, they're down, but they're going to come back and win. And I get that feeling with Florida. I get that feeling with Vegas. On some level, I still get that feeling with Colorado at times too, where it feels like they can just at will bring that game back and have that comeback victory. Chicago is not going to be that team this year. The problem is it doesn't feel like they have what they need to start that comeback. Because while people are going to point at Bedard's production, and I'm sure some are going to say, well, clearly he's not the player he was going to be, but where are the wingers? Like it was supposed to be I assumed it was Teravainen and Bertuzzi who were going to be his wingers for the whole season. If it's Kurashev and Donato, that's not Teravainen and Bertuzzi. You look at their careers, I think putting him with Teravainen and Bertuzzi makes a little more sense. Bertuzzi's a good goal scorer, Teravainen's a decent point producer, and Bedard's good at both of those things. So you don't want to end up in a situation where when you get into extension talks with Bedard that he's asking questions about the organization, where things are headed, and what is best for him. Whether that's 8 years and stay in Chicago or it's something else. And I haven't heard anything to say that Bedard's not happy, but the body language on the ice is he's frustrated with the lack of production. And he should be. You get more frustrated when a player isn't frustrated, but which leads to more frustration on our part. But at any rate, that frustration, it's going to have to change soon because you're on the cusp of what could potentially be a disastrous season for Bedard. He is, as I said, getting his chances here and there, but is he standing out as a superstar in every single game? In some, yes. In others, not as much. And so you do have to keep an eye on that. And if you're Chicago, does that mean making a change at coach? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What would you do to get Chicago at least scoring goals? I'm not talking about wins. I'm not talking about their record getting a lot better, but get them scoring goals. Get Bedard's numbers up and start to see that trend in a positive direction. Who would you put him with? Who would you make for his wingers? And if you were going to trade for one player, is there somebody that you would say as a Chicago fan or just a fan in general, you'd say, you know what, they should go after this player? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.